Hi, everybody, and welcome to today. Today is a very special day for me. We have a mainframe hero, a living legend with us today. Welcome to Tish Talks Tech. My name is 𝗚𝗨𝗘𝗃, and we are here with
Ray Mullins.
Ray Mullins. I had a quick feedback there. I forgot that I had Twitter on.
It's feeding back.
All of that going on, so I had to turn it off really quick. But yeah, we have Ray Mullins here. How you doing, Ray?
I am doing fine. You look great. Good to see you again after 2 weeks plus, I think.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Thank you so much. You look great too. And
Thank you.
How are the puppies?
I'm wearing my Jimmy Buffett memorial shirt today. So.
We love him.
Oh man.
And we'll miss him, right?
Yeah.
Good songs.
Yeah.
Really good songs.
Yeah, it is. It is a big loss. And as at my age and things, these are when you start to see the cultural touchstones pass on. And this is one. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He just kept reminding us there are better ways of living, and just if you get overwhelmed at times, just sit back, relax. Even if you do it in your mind, it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm so happy that you're here. I want to remind everyone that today, like usual, we have the chat happening. So if you're on and you want to chat, you are more than welcome to. And I'm sure Ray doesn't mind answering your questions if you have some good ones. We have questions for Ray as well.
Even bad questions. I'll answer bad questions too.
You'll answer bad questions too?
Yeah, well, let me tell you. So, piece of advice from my first full-time job, the coworker I shared the cubicle with. Mm-hmm. He said, there is no such thing as a stupid question the first time it is asked. The implication is remember the answer, which I know sometimes these days can be hard, but never be afraid to ask a question because it is not stupid.
We love that. We love that. And you can write it down. And there's so many tools now to taking your notes and to remembering. And I find that to be so good, especially when you're learning new stuff, like most of us new ones are.
These things, you think, how much in 15-ish years, how much that has changed our life. I see the chats.
And here comes the chat. Yeah, the chat is.
Bonsoir, Georges.
Hi, Georges. Yes. Yeah. I was gonna tell you, you are one of. I have like 50 people that were on my wish list, and one day I just sat down and I was just like, who would it be? And to be on this show, if I was to ever have a show, and I do, and here you are. So I'm just so happy that you're here and that we get to talk about your journey a little bit, because you're pretty remarkable. The very first time that I even heard about you, I was like such an infant in my journey, and it was through 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and you were on his show, on his podcast.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I was hot on Twitter that day. I was like, "Hello, Mr. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Please tell me more about that guy that you had on your show."
And Reg is probably still answering your question, telling me about it.
Yeah, he can talk. And you know what? And from that day forward, we're like the best of friends. And I've met so many of you all, and have just, and from that just spawned some really brilliant relationships amongst the ecosystem. And I just can't, I mean, invaluable.
Yeah. I've watched your rise from somebody, you know, I'll say on Twitter. I still can't call it the 24th letter of the alphabet. Just watching, you and asking and being okay, I'm
like it
older,
is.
but it is what it is. But you are a younger mainframer, and watching someone like you just jump in, see the wonders of our ecosystem and how great it is. And addition, you're of a generation that is more media savvy than my generation. Some of us are, most of us aren't, but you can go in and evangelize IBM Z, or Z for our other English speakers, that what a great it is. And you can also send the message now to people younger than you coming into the ecosystem. And I've been very happy to watch your rise.
Thank you. It's been so rewarding for me to be able to share this space. I feel like it's like this hidden treasure that folks don't know about. I'm like, y'all touch it every day. You don't know anything about that. And I see the folks, I'm not going to say the young ones, because I hate it when that's used, but I can say, the folks out in the street, the ones that are coming on that are new. And they're like, that's old. I'm like, who told you that?
Yeah, it's, actually, I was very happy back in New Orleans to see the demographic of attendees is definitely getting younger, which is what, I'm very happy to see that, because, even now looking back, 6-7 years ago, there was not as much. I mean, Z Next Gen was going well, but it didn't, you could just tell that there wasn't a lot of repeats coming in, and now we're seeing them. Actually saying, our good friend Jeff Bisty, he did his share retrospective video, and one of the things I thought was great was someone who said, I haven't been to share in 5 years, and I'm back, and I'm sorry I haven't been here for back to the in-person events, which I think is great. Share. Okay, share. It's not an acronym. It's what we do. Okay, that's my marketing puff for the moment. But see, people who know me, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a marketing person.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a manager. I create code.
Tell us more about you. Can you tell us about how you started? Because the journey is epic.
Yeah, well, as in my era, mainframes were pretty much what was out there. There were what was called mini computers. Those would be like your 𝗥𝗡𝗥𝗏s, the IBM system 30 whatevers. But if you really, mainframe was where we were, where data processing was. And then, thank you, Lionel. That was the discussion we had on Friday. But yeah, it's just what Lionel said. I am an artist. My milieu is programming and code. My stick figures suck. I will say that publicly. But, this is where I express my creative energies. And even back then, so this is around 1980, I started taking computer classes. I had no idea what I wanted to do coming out of high school, and a couple ideas. And then the last semester of my senior year, there had been a computer class, and they opened it up to more people. And I'm like, okay, because I had gotten a programmable calculator the Christmas before. And I thought programming was for like the real smart people. No, but then as it turned out, I'd say I got bored playing with the calculator. I started reading the programming stuff, and I mean, okay, there's a bright spot on the wall behind me, but it's basically, the light bulb went on, and oh my gosh, I was hooked. And then eventually at the community college, I became a student worker. And then they asked me to be a part-time lab manager, as due to the demand in the early 80s, they were keeping the computer lab open now 7 days a week, and they needed coverage for the weekend hours. And then excuse me. And then I got a full-time job, but it was with PCs. The college had engaged with a savings and loan, which for younger people, that's basically was a type of bank, and was unfortunately scandal-ridden in the late 80s, early 90s, and they just dissolved that type, and basically everything became a bank. I started there. The college was doing a fast track, basically a year of programming courses for training. Very, in a lot of ways, similar to some of the things we see nowadays. Of course, the curriculum was guaranteed. That was geared towards the company's needs, and they were all employees of the company. But what happened was they brought in some of us people to help and answer questions, and then, lo and behold, they started hiring us because they saw how good we were. And I got into PCs, and but I wasn't happy because I wasn't really creating code at the time.
Okay.
And then eventually I got an applications job programming COBOL, both batch and CICS. And I did that for a couple of years, but I'd always been technical. Back at college, when they got a Prime mini computer, I was the one that had the time that read a lot of the manuals, and kind of wrote management programs for it. Then I knew I wanted to be in systems, and I just hung out. I would talk to headhunters, and finally one said, okay, I'll see what I can do. And he found me a position as a system programmer, and then did system programming for about 4 years. But even then, as I started working with vendors, I realized, I really would like to be on the vendor side, which a lot of people don't, but for me, it really spoke something. And I then jumped over to customer support for Software AG. Then, as large German software company, still is around, with a big US component. And I did that for about 4 years. And during that time, I had to write a fix to a product, and I had to do it a source fix. It wasn't just, back in the days, we would write zaps, which is modifying the actual machine code. But I had to write brand new modules, and I really enjoyed that. And then, unfortunately, there were layoffs. I held out and eventually found a job with R&D, with a company with Platinum Technology, which is a big, was a big company back in the 90s. And you started with, R&D there, working on products that are now at Rocket, Zeek and Zach. And then moved on, and then Software AG came calling back, and I got to work on the product. It's called Entire System Server. I absolutely loved it. It has fingers into all parts of the operating system. but then again, the layoffs came, and since early 2003, I've kind of bounced around. At BMC, I've worked for BMC a couple of times, small companies mostly, in some respects, and now currently I'm working for a small company, Trident Services. Two sides. There's a services side, which is contract system programmers, and other that type system support to help out during times of need. And then we have a product called 𝗧, which is basically managing systems. Yeah, awesome. OS. Well, originally it was OS/EM, and then when Z's were added to everything, it was it's basically kind of like it has a lot of facets. A lot of it is geared to replacing old user exits that back in the day, but yeah, let's say, back in the day, you used to write custom assembler exits, and basically our stuff is we have administration panels creating rules, and then we slip our code in the exits and interpret them. So it's a really great product and great people there, and so I'm enjoying that very much. Started doing share thanks to a previous employer around 2016. Started volunteering there, and have continued to volunteer since. I am now of what I think we're calling the languages, APIs, and frameworks track. Or as I realized when I was in New Orleans, it's the laugh track. I did not, when I suggested that back during scheduling, I didn't even see that. And if you know me, you'd be surprised that I didn't see it. So, anyway, I've worked, I've bounced around probably a little more than the typical person. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of involuntary separations during those times, but I'm glad I did, because I've had broad exposure to so many components like DB2, IMS, MQ, were in its various names over the past couple of decades. So I like where I've gone so far, and I expect probably, I would say, at least another decade of this going on.
More than that.
I'm older than you think. I'm going to get to that point where I'll go part-time eventually, and then it'll be time to fire up the RV and hit the road and see this wonderful country.
Yeah. So it's going to be travel via RV. It's not going to be QE2. I thought that it would be QE2 for you.
That was just that one. It took me a moment where the 7 Seas hint came from, but it was my my first cruise back in June. We are actually going on another cruise in late January with a friend of ours. This will be a much bigger ship. We're just going to want to see what it's like.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'd never been on a cruise before until that past June, and I did like it very much. So I enjoyed it. It was good. It was great.
Yeah. And what was your favorite part?
Let's see. I did like the excursion we took in Sitka, where basically went out on a boat and we saw eagles and otters and the whales. Overall, the whales were there, but they weren't spectacular. You'd see the flukes come up every once in a while, but nothing, like photographers dream of.
Right.
Lots of things. But to me, the thing I liked about Sitka, which was our next to last stop, was I had to go into town. Needed to go to the drugstore, and the downtown was like 2 blocks from where our shuttle boats picked up. So I went downtown, very nice, downtown, but I stepped in the store and it was like walking right back into the 40s and 50s. They had an actual soda fountain that was operational.
Really?
And it was just wow. would have loved to have, stayed there. And Sherry, my wife, and I are talking about it would be nice to hop around some of these southern Alaskan towns just to spend a couple of days. I would love to be around Sitka. Sitka to me was really my favorite experience of the whole trip. In Alaska. Victoria is great too. Unfortunately, we didn't have much time. We just ran up to Butchart Gardens and back. But here in a couple of weeks, and that's why we had to schedule this now, I'll be taking 2 weeks off and basically driving back up there to Vancouver Island for 4 days.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Gonna go up the coast.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna go up the coast, cross over, spend 4 days, come back inland. We're taking the dogs with us. That may or may not be a mistake. We'll see how. But
lots of pictures, lots of memories.
There will be. Yes, exactly. Yeah, watch Instagram, and we'll probably seeing a lot in Twitter and some of the other new socials out there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, I love how you're able to tell us about how your journey has enabled you to be able to do some of the things that you love. You have a little free time, and yet you find the balance to do the free time thing and to do the thing that you love, which is code. You love code, and you love to be able to express yourself. And I love how, I also love, I'm going to use that word a lot, I love how you expressed that you express yourself through your code. How did you get yourself to that point?
It's always been a part of my programming experience. I remember once the summer between my graduating from high school and starting introductory computer stuff at community college, I got some books from the library. I taught myself Fortran. I got the basics of COBOL. PL1 I read a bit about. Those were the big languages back in that era. And then I would just start writing. And to me, at first, it was more of like, okay, this is how I learn. I write the code, programming. Of course, back then, BASIC was pretty much the learning language. And so I was pretty, that I had down pretty much thanks to the high school semester. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, okay, I want to do this. What code do I need to write? How do I manipulate data? And essentially, when you come right down to it, you're manipulating data no matter what it is. How do I manipulate the data to get what I want? One of the things when I was lab manager, I'd have students come up to me and say, hey, I'd like to learn how to code. And of course, then the next question was almost always, how good do you have to be in math? And this was something that kind of came out really of the beginning days of computers, because computers started as fancy calculators, really, to evaluate mathematical expressions more quickly than a human could. So there's always this kind of, you got to be a genius. And this is even what I felt at first. But then I look at them and I go, how well did you do in geometry? And that always got the weird look. I say, well, think about it. Geometry is all about proofs. You're given A, you want to get to B, and you have just a fixed ways and steps and things to manipulate, to get from A to B. And things like you get, okay, the sums of the interior angles of a triangle are 180. Well, you can use that fact to derive other things. But it's like, if you're given A, you want to get to B, you have inviolable things, you can't make stuff up to get there. If you found that easy, then programming is for you, because it's all down about logic and how to use items. And that, when I explained that, there were quite a few people that, oh, okay, that actually sounds good to me. I did well in geometry, I did okay and stuff. And the other thing with math is when you start getting into algebra, there's obviously proofs of things like the quadratic equation, but it's a very similar thing. Math has very fixed rules, and you can't go outside those.
Right.
And so if you find that A to B journey with limitations easy, then writing code and programming is for you. And even nowadays with some of the no code things and objects and that we're using building blocks. It's still the same thing. You have A, you want to get to B, you have to choose the right building block.
Right. So. Right. And can you visualize it? Do you see it? Does it make sense to you? And I tell people that too. I'm like, well, does that make sense to you? Do those colors mix? Does that make sense? And they're like, oh yeah. Oh, I get it. It's steps. It's like PEMDAS.
Exactly. Yeah. And don't be afraid to try something. If you're unsure, write a little chunk of code. And I do find that that's the way to learn things that I'm now being introduced to as I learn, let's see how it works. And I'll just write a stupid little program that does what I think it does.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work, then what happens?
You check on, you read, you try something else.
Yep.
And then sometimes you go read in the manual, go, oh, okay, I can't use that. So, and then you write an IBM idea up that says, hey, I'd like to do. Oh, that was the.
I see what you did there.
I know.
Yeah, that might not work.
Yeah. But I got a lot of future considerations on my ideas, which means I think something. Either that or just trying to keep me quiet. You guys at IBM, I love you. You know that.
Yes.
So helpful to me over the years.
Very, very. I really enjoy how when you talk, they listen. I saw I was sitting in on a few of the talks at Share, and people come to attention when you speak. They may just implement some of those ideas. You never know.
I know it's something I don't see because obviously at that moment I'm looking at the speaker for the most part, but I'm glad you told me that. The first time I spoke in Share actually was in March 2013. I did a presentation on my own. And my name was well known in the community then, mainly from the listservs over the years. And I went to speak, and it was in the Friday dead zone, and it was San Francisco. So, a lot of people are already heading out. I went into the room, and I was actually surprised it was a larger room. And then people started coming in. And it wasn't, and many people told me later, it's like, well, I don't work, they were CICS people. They were, other things. They weren't, but said they wanted to meet me in person.
Yeah.
And at that point, I realized that I really had made the right career choice over the years, that I'm in the community. I'd already been accepted by the community, but it just really cemented it. And I've been here, ever since, with that. And I'm glad to be, recognized. I'll say it doesn't drive me. I'm not the type to say, oh, I want to be known more and more and more, but it gives me satisfaction. That people talk to me. They've, I get a lot of reach outs all the time behind, behind the scenes. And it kind of also, I didn't get my 4-year degree early on. When the Great Recession hit, Sherry and I went to Sac State and we started working to get our 4-year degrees. Just something to do. It was also something my mom had always wanted. And I had to do it on the part-time plan. But because I was older and what they label a non-traditional student, I had a lot of younger people coming up to me and asking about career advice. I have some good friendships still coming out of that era. I was also the token mainframer, and there were a couple of the professors that would say, well, by the way, and the mainframe, hey, Ray, what can you say about this? Which, I mean, is great. I love, that's something I do, is I love teaching. I've done brown bags and stuff over the years. I have this knowledge and I want to share it. I do expect maybe someday if I go part-time or retire, maybe I'll have, Darren or Scott can pick me up on, and ask me to go teach some classes over the thing.
That would be sold out every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. I'd love doing, if I do especially now with, all of our technology, I could sit here in the office and do this, but I don't really have I'm not the person that can, set this all up. I should do it sometime, but I know there's time involved in setting up what you've done here. But sometime down the road, I could record, especially with the new share, what do we call? Oh, learning platform. Scott's going to kill me for misnaming it, but for doing some types of talks on that, and at least recording. And so I've spoken with Cher a lot of times, and I've really enjoyed doing that.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Folks would benefit so much just to hear, even if you did not have a whole emulator setup or anything, just to hear the lecture piece would be chef's kiss.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember the brown bag I did back at BMC 20 years ago. So for assembler people, you'll recognize the pain of blowing out a base register and having to use another one. And the fellow was saying, this had happened. And I said, well, why not use the relative branch instructions? And he looked at me seriously like, what are you talking about? And I said, they've been in the standard since 1991, which at that point was about 13 years ago. And it's like, wow. So I showed him in the pop and he's like, oh my gosh. And he actually was able to reclaim the other code base registers and simplify the stuff he was working on. And so I wound up doing a brown bag at lunch. It's like, this is how it is. IBM provides this very nice macro, so you really don't have to do anything. You don't have to change the instructions. And that gave me really, I was, very happy about that. A lot of, pleasure and happiness. I think I hear Poppy. Oh, no. Okay. It's a cheese stick being dropped in the hallway. Okay. As long as they're good. I thought we were going to have the scratching occur.
Yeah. The chihuahuas, I'm sure, are coming at any moment. No worries about that. There are dogs on this webcast. No worries.
Yes.
I think that's wonderful. I think that, and I really, really enjoy the moments of when people feel joy because they're teaching other people. And that's what this ecosystem does. People that are learning the mainframe and people that are professionals on the mainframe, it's just this big learning wheel, like this cycle. And we're all like, hey, you want to learn this? Yeah, I want to learn that. And then the new people, when they have new people, oh, I know about this. And we want to see this. Yeah. And wow, it's just, we're always feeding each other. It's awesome.
It is. And there's the ecosystem is so large now with so many components no one can learn everything about IBM Z. And when I started, you kind of could. But now it's like, you know, for as an example, WLM, Workload Manager. I know it's there. I kind of know what it does. I wouldn't know how to, you know, I wouldn't know how to set it up, but I know where to look. And if I had to, I would pick it up. But on the other hand, like there's always an opportunity to learn about something you don't know about because there are so many parts. You know, for example, the cryptography stuff. I, for many years, had, I'll say, managed to avoid it until about 3 years ago when I had to actually look something up in there because I was looking at code that had been around forever. And why was it calling a cryptography function? As it turned out, it was using the hash. It really wasn't actually called GSF. That it, one of the, I'll say, side effects, but one thing it returns is a hash of the data, and that was being used for validation. But you know, I think, you know, look at it. I would say, especially in the area of data security being big now, if there's a mainframer, you know, budding mainframer out there, I would say start looking at the ICSF integrated cryptography. I can't remember something. Well, facility. The F is always a facility in IBM stuff. So, but that's I mean, really, that's becoming a very important part of our ecosystem is data security, whether it's, you know, in transit or, you know, encryption on, you know, the encrypted on disk, data at rest things. And then also management of all the things that affect security. For example, say, you know, I'll say SAF, so not as to actually pick out a specific product. The keys that are involved in encryption. There are a lot of, I'll say, some of the more recent entries into the ISV field have been around this, you know, key management things. One thing, though, actually, it says kind of lens around is something that I've pushed for 2 decades. One of the big problems we've had in our ecosystem is the high cost barrier to entry. And unfortunately, IBM, and I'm gonna hit them hard on this. They have stumbled. Well, first they ignored, and then they started the master the mainframe, which to me was a good introduction. And now it's the 𝗔𝗍𝗆𝗄 project, and they're doing so many good things with that. But once you're done with that program, where do you go from there? There's no way at this time, there's no affordable way at this time to continue the learning journey, the independent learning journey that, you know, that people need when learning. We need to keep this consistency. Right now, if you want to continue going on in this, you either find a project like the Franklin, the apprenticeship type things that are going on, or you find an employer that wants, you know, that is willing to help you in your journey learning about this.
What do you suggest?
Well, the original IBM concept of the ZD&T, the Learner's Edition, which was a low-priced version of what there is the ZD&T, which is the one that's sold to enterprises, which is about $5,000. And then they came out with one that was reasonably priced. It was under the idea was under $200 for the token and the USB dongle and the software. The problem is that they did not realize. Someone did not realize how popular it would be, and they were unprepared.
Z is popular.
I was going to say, yes, a lot of people knew how it would be. The latest that we've been talking about is something in the cloud using 𝗏𝗏𝗏, the Z as a service component. But I have some qualms with that, because if you've ever noticed articles about, especially Amazon Web Services, how easy it is suddenly you get a bill and it's $50,000 and you have no why, and you're just some student. And that's the thing I'm afraid of the cloud service for this reason, is you get a CPU loop. I do like the idea, because it's very easy to spin up the instances and break them down, but there needs to be protection against outrageous bills in it, because you don't want someone who's young, a college student or a hobbyist. There's a lot of hobbyists that want to learn about this as well. Another thing too, unfortunately, is if you have an idea for a product, even with this, it's still very expensive to get in, because you have to get the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which is the developer version of the ZD&T. But you still have to invest, at least $5,000 for a basic system. And if you're a guy in the basement with an idea, you may not have $5,000. It's just kind of, we need to find this easy middle ground to build the ecosystem gradually. Going back even before my era, the 70s and into somewhat the 80s, a lot of the software we're using today was written by system programmers. Their company had a need. I go back and look at the creator of ACF2, the security system. He worked at Bank of America. They wanted to secure stuff. He wrote stuff, in his spare time. And when, back then the computers really weren't needed 24 hours a day. So he wrote the product. And that, it started, and then he worked out with his employer that, hey, I'd like, I think I got a product here I'd like to go on, and, he makes arrangements, and, his employer basically got it for free for many years, but to thank them for using the software to write it on. And we had, so much of that during the era. And nowadays, that's impossible. The bean counters and also basically the charge. I mean, let's face it. IBM Z is an expensive platform, but it is because at scale you can do so much with it.
It's very flexible, and it fits everything.
It does. It does, and the I/O capabilities of it are just incredible. You can, there are a lot of studies out there that show that one, say the Linux one server can well outperform a bunch of rack-mounted Intel AMD servers. The best language for, or I should say, Java. Now the IBM Z is the best platform for Java because they have added instructions that really optimize a lot of common things in the JVM.
Right.
And again, just the I/O. You just cannot, the parallel I/O capabilities. You can do hundreds of thousands of transactions a minute, and nothing at, just, you wouldn't, there's no load. Well, there's a load, but you don't see any delays.
Right. You don't feel it.
No, not at all.
Wow. Wow. So I guess it's just what you're saying. It's just kind of like, maybe it's great. It's a good idea. We just need to kind of figure out, how do we deal with the cost?
Yeah. And also somebody told me, I can't remember. Oh yeah, it was actually one of the IBM people during the first attempt. Is they said that IBM had forgotten how to sell to individuals, and that is a true statement. I actually bought manuals for them as an individual in the early 80s, and it was a little hard, but still, I mean, but they were able to do it, and I definitely saw that issue when they tried the learner's edition. It would be, I think maybe we just, as much as I hate to say, we need to take a step back. Maybe we need to get the community involved. We need to get the Z ecosystem people involved, and maybe just like, hey, this is what we want. And there will always be pushback from IBM in some areas, but the thing we need to sell them is that by making it easy entry into the ecosystem, you're going to grow the platform. You're going to get people interested at a younger age. I remember back the old master, the mainframe, there was a high school in a computer class somewhere back east. They were all using it. So it was, the engagement process with younger people it's gotten better, but we still, I think, have a lot to do in this area.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like everyone's, how you say that, like everyone's thing, right? Like everybody wants the kids, the everybody. I can't talk all of a sudden, but it's a whole engagement issue. And we use the word engagement because engagement means commitment, right? And so, yeah, people in high school, there's all these folks, and I think that the biggest thing is that what folks don't understand is that these people are ready. They use their phones all the time. They already use Turnitin or whatever it is that they use to be able to submit their papers. And again, I haven't had anybody in high school in years in my house, but from what I remember it was nothing but computer this, computer that, and now that she's in college, it's nothing but computer this and computer that. And computer science is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And if we could just allow for folks to be exposed, and to taste it everywhere.
I remember 2019, as part of the master of the mainframe, I went down to Sacramento City College to talk to the ACM chapter there one evening. That was fun. I got a call. Hey, can you go down tomorrow? Sure. And then at the last thing, it's like, hey, can you speak first? Okay. I still and I no honestly, pressure. I winged it. I mean, I completely winged it, but I remembered something from, I think it was a Bob Rogers, something he'd given like earlier, is like, and I started with, how many of you know what a mainframe was? There's probably about 60 people in there. And, I'd say about 10 people raised their hands. How many of you think you've used a mainframe? And there's like about 2. And I go, okay. And then I go, how many of you have made an airline reservation? How many of you used an ATM? And of course, boom, the hands just shot up. And I says, well, whether you know it or not, you may not be physically touching it, but you have used a mainframe. And a lot of people were like, wow. And then, of course, I explained about the, especially the financial area that, basically mainframes run, as Bob Rogers says, mainframes run Western civilization. And it is very true. The other thing too, here being in Sacramento, we have the state, which is one of the largest IBM customers around. And so especially, going community colleges and Sac State, there are, that's really a big employer to go into. And I'll say the state is good about training their mainframers, bringing people in, recognizing the talent, and then, and giving them the education, the training that helps them become good software engineers, developers, analysts too, designing systems. We can't, that's something, especially, and I tend to overlook it as well, is system, a business process design, how you take a business process and turn it into something, using a database, using communications lines, sending messages all over the place, dealing with a tandem nonstop computer that's really what the ATM is plugged into, and you've got that communication going on, plus then you've got the Siemens or Diebold or whoever is making the ATM now that is communicating with that tandem nonstop, which is communicating now to using DB2 DDR, remote contacts and stuff. And then you've got the DB2 regions and, that sort of thing. Either create something or repurpose what you've got. And now with, our phones, it's pretty much the same thing. Okay, there is Poppy.
I was waiting.
Well, I gotta say, including our 15-minute warm up here, that's a little over an hour. That's pretty good.
That's very good. Very good. Very good cameo appearance there.
Yeah.
But no, that's excellent. Here's my go-to with folks when they tell me, oh, mainframe, no, nobody's ever going to learn that. Nobody wants to learn that. I always tell them, I want you to go out to your favorite job website or to your favorite big tech company and look for their mainframe jobs. And they're going to be hiring. And they always come back and they say, and I usually tell them, especially like when I go to speak, and they say, oh, I didn't realize. I say, yeah, that tech company has a mainframe. That big cloud company that you just love so much has a huge mainframe shop.
Yeah.
Huge.
And
it's hilarious.
It is. And actually, I'm glad that we have great people like Dr. Cameron C., who, and I'm always, he has his students engaged, and I always love reading their posts where it's like, I came into this, I had no idea. And now I'm off to, I've got a great paying job at, and it's and it can be even like a smaller, medium-sized bank, for example. There's a lot of regional banks in this country that have mainframes. It's just not, B of A or Wells Fargo or US Bank or, those. It's, there's, I'm thinking like, someone we knew from he was doing the Z Next Gen for, project right. There's Jerry Edgington, he worked at, or no, actually, I'm sorry, not Jerry. I'm sorry, Art Gukowski's at Huntington Regional Bank. And he used to work at GM. And, it's been a great, the thing, if you're right, go out and look where the well-paying jobs are. And I say the well-paying jobs that have good life-work balance, because right now, I get reach outs all the time from startups that have nothing to do with mainframe, and they are throwing, they're quoting numbers 400,000 or 500,000 because they've got some venture capitalists behind them. But I can tell you right now, one, I'm too old to be working 20 hours a day. And at the same time, that money is going to dry up at some point. You know, don't pay me $500,000, pay two people $250,000 and you'll get twice as much. I'll throw the book out there, Fred Brooks, The Mythical Man Month, all about the design and the, you know, the whole IBM 360 project, which is how this all started. It's, you know, yeah, it's a management book, but at the same time, it really talks about a lot of flaws out there and a lot of misinterpretations. I mean, it's still valid 60 years later. And the thing is, too, is even though I'm not a management type, I did my management classes at Sac State, and that pretty much sealed the deal that, yeah, I will never be a manager, which I'd set for myself, you know, 30 years earlier. But at the same time, it's good to know the mindset that goes, you know, that is a part of that role, because it allows me as a software engineer to make a suggestion that they'll understand.
Yeah.
That, hey, as I said, instead of one guy, we hire two guys, half the price each. They're still happy making that money. But then also, if, you know, one goes on vacation, we're still covered for a little bit. That type of thing.
And they can bounce ideas off of each other.
Exactly. And it's, you know, that's just,
it's a thing.
It's a thing, yeah. I mean, I kind of lost where I was going with the story overall anyway, but yeah, it's a thing. It's out there, and, you know, definitely the young, you know, it's a great big world out there. And, you know, and if there's somebody watching this who isn't, I'll say, maybe not even working in techs, you know, somehow stumbled across, you know, it's that they know, you know, people word of mouth or something, but they want to get into tech. Don't be afraid of a career change. If you think you'll do it, go for it. I mean, you're a perfect example. But, you know, and I love your backstory too, though, of hanging around mom, you know, when she was taking the classes. And I will tell you, when I was computer lab manager, there were, you know, there were kids hanging around mom because mom's out there learning skills, and, you know, generally, it's rough for mom. It really is, because you're trying to code, and still at the same time, there's that motherly instinct of, where's my kid? Are they misbehaving? You know,
right?
Exactly.
Oh, she was having none of that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, I respect your story so much, and I love it. And I think that was a big part of during my master the mainframe journey, was I was just so drawn, because I said, wow, this individual went back to school, went back as an adult, like a full adult, after working, after being like an expert in the field even, and just went back to school, got the whole degree, and was like, you know what? I already know what I know. I just want the paper, and I'm good. And I'm still whole.
And I got knowledge from that, like especially the management and the you know, the areas, the legal. I'll tell you, the first upper division course was legal environment of business. And after that, I wanted to build a 20-foot wall around my house and let nobody in, because there's a lot of common law and legal, you know, legal things about property that I never knew about. And at that point, I'd owned a home for 10 years. Right. And about, you know, especially hazards, marking hazards on your property. I mean, that's why you put a beware of dog sign up, even though you got a golden retriever and he ain't going to bite anybody. You still want to do it, because if something happened, you know. HR, suddenly some of the weird decisions I saw coming out of that department made sense because of the HR think, the way they think. the different types of management, strategic, operations, how to, that was actually, that was a course I actually enjoyed, was operational management, which in a lot of ways is, numbers and formula. It's very math oriented in a lot of ways.
But it helped you to formulate some thoughts, and you were able to see things differently.
Yes, exactly. And it was good. That was good knowledge to pick that up. And at that age I was at, I was ready to go back for that kind of education. In my 20s, I wasn't ready to do all that stuff. I didn't have the mind, and then I just didn't have time, and my brain wasn't there. I wasn't mature enough. And, I recognized the,
yeah, I appreciate your story so much. And it's been a pure pleasure. And we are right at time. Before we end, are there any shout outs that you'd like to give?
Oh, well, see, I already shouted out to Reg.
We love Reg.
Yes. Oh, we love Reg. We know it. When I finally met him in I think it was Orlando, we just knew, because we'd always had this rapport on the listservs and stuff over the years. And yeah, Reg, we are going to do that podcast someday. Just,
when are y'all going to do that? And are you guys going to do something? I read your piece on the neurodiversity on Share, and excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
And if you all, I'm going to link that to you, to our YouTube channel. Also, are you all going to just make that a thing? Like an ongoing blog?
That's actually, and Reg, we've talked about doing a Mainframe podcast, and we actually were going to launch it after Share Fort Worth in 2020, and we all know what happened.
Yeah.
And it's, time frame. I mean, one of, and we talk about in there, I'm ADHD, and one of the flaws a lot of ADHD people have is we tend to sometimes spread ourselves too thin. And it's just kind of finding the time, it's Reg and I, and we taped an episode, a starter episode that never aired, because we actually, what happened was we did it was, February, March, and we kind of discussed what was happening in China with COVID. And we decided when everything shut down, it's like, we better not, because it was very prescient, it was basically, this is where we're heading. It's just, it would be nice to get that going again. I just, I have a lot of things that I do, both here and outside work, and we never really have talked too much about that. And I think we're going to have a part 2 some point later down the road, because we have the sheet of questions. We've touched only a couple of them, so
yes,
it's I definitely will extend. I'd like to do this in 2-3 months, once you get some of those other people knocked off the checklist.
Yes, that would be so nice.
Yeah.
Ray, you are like the cranberries and the pickles in the salad.
Oh, why, thank you.
I love that. And I just I really enjoyed having you on, and to hear the story from your own mouth, which has been, and looks like David 𝗏𝗏𝗏 has said.
Oh yeah, he's reminiscing like I'm reminiscing. Yeah, it was actually, I know the first one I bought was VS Basic Programmer's Guide, which was referenced all the time in the VS Basic manual, but the school didn't have a copy of it in the manual section there. So I went and I bought it. Yeah, I know. It was, well, it talked about things that, there were things that was going on. Hi, David. Just kind of, the system was really, they really tied down the student system. So there were things in there like accessing VSAM data sets, which the students were not allowed to do, create a VSAM data set. So a lot of stuff wasn't, as it turned out, wasn't relevant, but it was still neat learning about all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't remember some of the other manuals I picked up. Oh, I did. I remember getting a Principles of Operation when I started working, got my own copy of it.
How big was it back then?
Not the behemoth it is today.
Oh my goodness.
The System 371, probably about 300 pages, or maybe 350. I have one floating around here in my office, in my bookcase. Then the 390 got a little bit. Yeah. Oh, those are, David, those are some things I haven't heard of in a long time. Yeah, the quick index and the System 370 bibliography.
Where is this coming from?
Oh, you get people of our age out there, Letitia. You start exercising these brain cells. I mean, I remember getting, looking at the bibliography in the work library and just the manual. I mean, basically, it wasn't a web page. It was a manual of manuals available. It was with their order numbers. Okay, that's enough, Poppy. I think Poppy's telling us it's time to quit. We can keep going all the time.
We can keep going, and we have to get David. I've actually interviewed David, and it never aired. And and I have it. It's like in a collection that I have, and now I have to have you all on in like a Teams of some sort where we can all go down memory lane, and I'll just sit there like this. What? The whole time, just like you talk.
The stories.
That's it.
Yeah, the stories. That's the one thing. Yeah, that's true. That's where they are, David. Although it's funny, I've actually gone on my side gig on the VSE operating system, VSEN. There's some DOS manuals out there that I have gone to find to try and figure out what the heck were they thinking of 40 years ago, because you can't find them. IBM doesn't publish them anymore. DOS VS, VSCAF, that. And I'm just so happy that somebody had the foresight to scan these manuals and put them out there. Actually, also Script VS, if you remember that, David, that's basically what in the Unix world is, I forget. It's basically generating manuals, but all you had was text things. So it's basically a text file that's used then you take the output to generate manuals. It would convert it to whatever printing system you had. And that's how IBM for decades produced their manuals. And my company still uses it as the base. But you can't find the manuals anymore. But they're BitSavers has them, and actually they have a PC version that has the best table of all the commands, all the formatting commands, and I've got that on my PC just to because that's the quickest way to look at it if I needed to do something when updating a manual. Yeah, it's there's a lot of old stuff out there, and a few of us remember it, and that's why
we need y'all to stay around so we can get all of this. That's why I do this show.
Yeah.
So we can have some sort of repo.
And I'll say nowadays, especially in the past few years, what's called retro computing, which is making this old stuff work again. This subreddit, Vintage Computer, Stack Overflow has the retro computing section, and there are people making things work that stuff I hadn't heard of in 30 or 40 years, and it's like, wow.
Wow, that's great.
Oh, not century 21st century. No, I just was mentioning the side gig. That's all, David.
Okay.
So
okay, well, cool.
all
Are you
right.
going to Tech Exchange? Are you going to be at Tech
No,
Exchange?
no, vacation. I was
Oh, that's
so
right,
upset when they
vacation.
announced I was so upset when they announced the schedule, and I'm like, no.
And it's hard
So
because it's back to back to back to back to back.
yeah.
We call it the season.
Yeah, apparently my understanding was IBM had some credits or something to take advantage of, and that's why it got slotted in for that week.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, but
yeah, that's the thing, when you hear things, people. When I went, that came up when with the IBM Champions program, which, hey, shout out to the champions, folks. I went out to lunch with Libby and Sherry, and
love them.
Yeah, and Glenn Schenk.
Love him.
Who else?
He's so funny.
Oh gosh, and I'm glad that he made it. He told me he didn't know until Friday before that he was going to share.
What?
So yeah, well, he's semi-retired. He retired, and then of course, like all good retirees in our world, we get come back on contracts. I'm trying to think who else was in the share. Yeah, there's one other person. I can't remember who it was now, but yeah, we went out to breakfast on Thursday morning, and it was but that was kind of the thing that was mentioned, because I think I asked one of them asked why Las Vegas at that week, and it was like, IBM had some stuff they had to use or lose it, so they slotted that in there. So
well, we'll be there, but
I'm fear of missing out. I will definitely I'll be keeping an eye on things in the evenings once we've checked into wherever we're staying at night, and next year.
Well, you will be missed, but I know that hey, again, well balanced. Thank you so much, Ray, for coming on.
Thank you, Letitia.
I appreciate you so much, and we will let you go.
Yep, there's Poppy.
There's Poppy. Bye, Poppy. Bye, Ray.
Bye.
Everybody, I want to thank you so much for joining today. It has been a pure pleasure, and we are out. It has been a pure pleasure. We will talk to you very, very soon. And for some reason, I don't know how I disconnected you. That is so weird. But here you are. It's been such a pure pleasure.
The gremlins. Isn't modern technology wonderful?
I'm like, let me turn my camera on.
Oh boy.
I'm so sorry. There's a first.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I was still here. I can see them in the chat. Oh. I didn't leave. I didn't click out.
Yeah, I saw you there. I was like, wait a minute. Why is he gray? That doesn't make sense. But thank you, everybody, for coming today. We have learned so much about Ray and the journey, and we learned to not give up and to find your bliss in the code. The code is your friend, or whatever it is that you're doing, and that there's other things that you can do within the ecosystem. There's many different ways to learn, and all of us have our special ways of learning.
Exactly.
It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great.
The trip down memory lane. Oh. And the pool was only 300 pages back in the day.
I know.
Who would have thought? Thank you, Ray, again.
You're
and
welcome.
Thanks everybody in chat. Lionel and David and Salisu. Did I miss anybody? No. So have a great time. The next time I see you, it'll be from Tech Exchange. It's going to be pretty amazing. I'll talk to you.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you again. So yep, we'll definitely talk to you soon.
We'll do a volume 2 sometime.
Yeah, sometime.
Yeah,
sometime. All right. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.